Let's jump right into the third session of the product track. We now have Joao Romao, I'm surely pronouncing it not correctly, who's the principal PM and growth at outsystem.com, who's gonna talk about product-led and sales-led, the dynamic duo. So, Joao, thank you for joining us, and there you go with the slides.
Thank you, Massimo. Hi, everyone. My name is João Romão. I'm a principal PM owning the growth group at OutSystems. And today, I wanted to talk about this duality that we find in B2B companies. Let me give you a quick introduction about myself. So, OutSystems, the company I work for, is a global leader in application development. So if you want a simple version of it, we're a software that helps companies build software. So we have these two very different types of users, the IT leaders that buy the platform, and then the developers who use the platform. So you can start to see the nuances between the ones you use, the ones you buy. And this is something that I also bring from my previous past, founding two companies, one in social commerce, one in MarTech, where not always a sales-led approach versus a product-led approach was the most optimal one. So where do we start? We can start at looking at either sales-led or product-led as two options to drive growth of your companies. If we go to sales-led, this is the classic approach. You have a demand generation engine that generates leads. Leads become MQLs. They go through a funnel. They're engaged by sales, and hopefully they become customers. Normally, there's some sort of trials, demos, professional services involved to show you the product, but pretty much you're depending on a sales organization to drive your growth. On product-led, you could think the other way around. So product-led is a growth model where the product usage itself is the main driver of acquiring, retaining, and monetizing your existing customer base. Well, most people think, and most companies actually opt for one and another. When I joined, my responsibility was to implement product-led growth at OutSystems. What I learned is that because there's a disparity in the way people want to experiment, want to buy these products, there's actually value in doing both of them. So what are some pitfalls to avoid when integrating these two motions? So one is, it's very easy to look at the sales versus product on a us versus them problem. You're competing with sales. You're taking leads out of marketing. You're taking the attention out of your prospects. You should not be doing that. Rather, you should optimize for collaboration between the two teams. There's another pitfall, which is when people go too extreme on a product-led approach, they try to make the product as easy as possible. A good example of this is when companies try to minimize or eliminate all friction from, let's say, a sign-up process. And because they want to shorten the lead time to get to something in the product, they ask you for an email and password. Bam, no friction, in seconds in your product. The problem becomes, how do you know this customer is on your ideal customer profile? How do you know this person is the right one to evaluate your product through its usage? So again, even if you're collaborating with your sales-led counterparts, how do you make sure that this person that's using your product actually is something or someone that you can actually then vouch for and help evaluate the platform from a buying perspective? And again, joining both of these topics, you're most likely not going to be successful in merging these two motions if there's no alignment and no sharing of incentives and goals between your product, your marketing, and sales teams. Again, one thing that I like to summarize is either you're sales-led or product-led, it's more of a mindset. If you're going product-led, you have to inspire the whole company into thinking in a product-led approach. If you're a salesperson from a product-led team, what you need to understand is, how can I leverage these product usage insights in ways that maximize my time, my effort, my investment into talking with those leads that perhaps do not want to buy, let's say, in self-service, but actually want some hand-holding from a salesperson. And because of this product usage, are more likely to be more successful. So here I'm trying to frame an hypothesis, which is, it's not an and, sales and product-led, choose one. It's likely a or, and, sorry. So how can we leverage both motions from sales and product-led and make a 1 + 1 more than 2? So good ways are to find the balances between these three-step system that I mentioned before. So there's an acquisition part, there's a retention part, and there's a monetization part. In each way, you can leverage parts of the organization, marketing or go-to-market, sales, and products to leverage your product to drive value in each of these sections. So for example, if you're going product-led in terms of acquiring new users or prospects, you need to make sure that, for example, if you're using a free plan, that you're attracting the right type of users. Again, this is something that you can do with your marketing teams or product marketing teams. And it's something that you can evaluate through a few questions in your sign-up form to understand, are you the type of user that we are looking for? Do we have the problems that we are optimizing to solve for? Are you the type of company that buys from us? So you can start the relationship with that user through a product experience, but ensuring there's a market fit for the company you're targeting. For some users that are going through your product-led approach, it might be the case that they're so self-sufficient, so independent, that they want to buy independently from a sales motion. For those, you always should have an escape valve for them to buy without being sold to. Most companies have some sort of self-service checkout, and this is a great way to land in a very high velocity way. So normally companies have a smaller plan, an individual plan that targets these very specific usage scenarios where people can just buy and then expand from there. And about expansion, there's a very interesting path when people land fast, which is either they leverage consumption and they need to expand their accounts, or ideally, you and your product are able to evangelize the product in the organization, and then you have more people out of the organization, teams, not individuals, using your platform or product, which then necessarily brings you more ARR or expansion revenue in that case. So in practice, what does this mean? So it means that if you have sales teams and product teams, if you're having a sales motion and a product-led motion, you need to avoid some of the pitfalls and the things that are easy to overlook, but you should actually confront them. One is, it might be the case that the sales team does want to close a very high or too many high contracts at a very high value. You can optimize for small lands in the customers that want to buy small and work on expansion later. You don't need to sacrifice a huge sales cycle just to get those high value contracts. On the other side, you might want to close as many logos as possible, as many new customers as possible, but you might be leaving some money on the table for customers who want a little bit more features, a little bit more benefits, and are actually more willing to pay something else for your product. So there must be some contract, some engagement between sales, marketing, and product to make sure that everyone is aligned with that. The corollary is that the continuous sustainable growth comes from taking the best from both worlds, to make sure that you have a portfolio, a mix, a healthy mix of offering that caters to those scenarios. And one thing from my experience that helps this happen is that you're actually engaging with your counterparts in marketing and sales to share incentives, share goals, share OKRs, to make their success your success. Because if you're maximizing value for the customer, you're capturing that value, and that's good for your company. So in hindsight, and from years working from this, main learning that I learned from the person who actually hired me for OutSystems is that this shift from sales-led to product-led and combining the both, you must not look at it as a sprint. It's a marathon. It takes time, it takes trust, it takes a lot of effort to make it work, but the results are compounds. You might not see them in the beginning, but then they compound. And when you have the very oiled machine, then you can see all the results that this combination can bring to you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Joao. This was another very interesting and very hot topic, given, PLG is a bit the hot topic of the moment. Everyone is suddenly becoming PLG overnight. I'm sure in a lot of companies, this is creating conflicts with sales team. But actually, I think I totally agree with you. It should be good for everyone. I mean, sales, yes, they might have less leads because more are closing self-service, but on the other side, they can focus on the leads that have higher conversion rate that raise their hands. They want to speak with sales. So I think that should really work well. If anyone has questions, just write them in the chat. To kick things off, I'm curious about the reward and shared goal part. How does it work? Do you tie also economical bonus to a shared goal, like overall revenue across the service and sales? Does it have the risk of firing back and creating conflict, even more conflicts between the two teams? What's your experience?
Now, I'll give you an example. So one very interesting, we've done this for the last year and a half. One of the outputs of my growth team is an input for the sales organization. So, for example, success for one of my teams is the number of product qualified accounts, which is the number of companies, regardless of the number of users, who get to a sufficient product usage threshold that sales, in some cases, can engage with. Why? Because what we discovered was that over 2022, the companies who got to product qualified account had a 4 times higher close rate than the ones who didn't. So why am I battling with sales to take this from me when I know that they can leverage their work if I'm helping them getting a bigger pipeline to work with? So those kinds of shared goals are the ones that I really care about, because if I'm good at doing my job, I know sales is going to be competent in delivering theirs, and I know that I'm going to contribute to the company strategy and goals. So that alignment is a must.
Awesome. And even if they close self-service, I think they can still be an opportunity for sales as an upsell once they increase product usage, and probably they need to upgrade to an enterprise license. So it's still, they qualify themselves while generating revenue. So that's amazing.
Absolutely. And like in most businesses, it's easier for us to expand a customer than acquire a new customer. So if we can shorten and ease the land process for a customer that's willing to buy in self-service, we're just delivering a hot lead for an account executive to work on an expand motion in the next couple of months. So it all comes part of the process.
Totally agree. Awesome. Joao, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Session. And for everyone else, we'll catch up in 5 minutes with the next session. Thank you, Joao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.